When I was 16 years old, things were going pretty well because after all of the crap that my mom had lived through, she had finally met a decent man. His name was Don. Donald Chase, dad number 3. I remember very clearly the first moment I saw Don. I was 12 years old. And I got up one morning, and there was a man sleeping on our couch with his jacket over him, and I kind of tiptoed by him, and I sat down at our red dinette set, and I got my Raisin Bran, and I'm eating it. Don woke up, started talking to me right off the bat. First thing he said, "You must be Ricky," in a very pleasant voice. Mike got up, and he was nice to Mike. He was nice to Candy. Most bizarre of all, he was really nice to my mom. I had never in my life seen a man be nice to my mother before. They used to stand in the middle of our kitchen and kiss what I called movie kisses. Really long kisses. He'd lean her back for like a minute. If I had known tongues were involved, I would have barfed at the time. And Don started to hang out in our house, and I started to think of him as our salvation, in a way, as my escape from this bizarre childhood and Mom's long overdue chance for happiness. And he slept on the couch for a couple of weeks. And I got up in this one morning, and he wasn't on the couch, and I so panicked till I saw his car out front. It was a two-tone green 55 Ford, the car I learned to drive on. And I figured it out. They are sleeping together now. But I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't ashamed like I had been with the other guys, because Don was nothing like the other guys. And the happiest day of my life, by far, was the day they sat us down to tell us they were getting married. It was so tremendous. I remember just bursting, because this is what I wanted. I wanted to be like other people. You know, it is very embarrassing to be poor. I hated using our food stamps. I hated that kids made fun of me at school because of the way I smelled, and we were the welfare family, and that's the whole thing. A care package would come at Christmas, and it was so embarrassing. But all of that turned around when Don got a really good job at the aluminum plant in Troutdale, and he had a house built for us out in Fairview. I used to ride my Stingray bike out every day, and I'd walk through the framework of this house. I could not believe we would live there one day. And I go up to my bedroom, sawdust flying all around. I got to go through this color chart, choose any color I wanted for my room. I chose royal blue. My brother Mike chose glow green for his. When we moved in, it was like Christmas times 10. It was so great. Don built me this bed that my mom still has. It has drawers underneath, you know. I remember this one Saturday lying on my new bed, listening to Don mow our new lawn out back. And suddenly the lawnmower died, and Don started screaming my name, "Ricky! Ricky!" And I ran downstairs in a panic, and Mom was jumping up off the sofa, and we looked at each other and rushed out into the garage, and Don was standing there holding one of his fingers in this hand. And we rushed him to the hospital, and they sewed it back on, and it worked. It grew back, short and crooked, but it was okay. And I was so proud that week because everybody had been home. Saturday, my older brother Mike is in his glow green room upstairs. My mother, an adult, was downstairs, but when Don had needed help, he had thought to call out to me, to Ricky. It still makes me proud. And my mom, she blossomed. When we moved into that house, she was so happy, the happiest I'd ever seen her before or since. In fact, I think as a family, we were incredibly happy until Don started robbing banks. He held up 2 savings and loans and a Kmart before he was caught. It turned out he was a compulsive gambler. Had a prison record my mother did not know about. He maxed out the Visa MasterCard, he went through the savings, he wrote bad checks, and he left my mom with a lot of bills and 3 kids, and he went back to prison, and my mom divorced him, and we never saw him again. Candy was the only one to stay in touch. He had adopted Candy years before, and they were close. When Don went back to prison, I moved out of the house. I felt that I escaped. I had to. My mother sank lower than I could stand, and it was an emotional vacuum to be with her. And she hated Don now. We were not allowed to mention Don's name in her presence. 9 years went by before Mom ever discussed Don with me. And she called me one night in the middle of the week, and I knew the instant I heard her voice that something was wrong. And she told me over the phone that she had just heard from my sister Candy that Don had died of cancer in a halfway house in Portland. And she started crying over the phone. And it was the saddest moment in my life. And I do feel a great deal of shame today because I've told everybody that my big fear in life is that I turn out like my mother. I tell you the truth, I look at myself today and I realize that most of my best traits came from my mother. My sense of humor. It's so obvious. It's why I live life the way I do. Every emotion comes to me way too strongly and way too quickly. I cry more easily than anybody I know. Long-distance phone commercials, I'm like, oh, God, no. My latest thing, if I see elderly men eating by themselves in restaurants, I always tear up. It's gotten to the point that Lisa will say, Ricky, don't turn around. And I know I'm projecting myself into these guys. I think that this guy who was so in love with this woman for 40 or 50 years is alone now. And will go home alone, and will sleep alone, and will wake up the next morning and just for an instant think his wife is beside him. And it is so sad to me. And that's why I do what my mom would have done. That's why I make fun of this guy now. It is my defense mechanism, my sick sense of humor. I remember years ago walking through the Embarcadero section here in San Francisco with a friend, and we noticed this guy in front of us. Very nice guy in a nice suit on, a briefcase in this hand. This hand was gone, missing, replaced with one of those hook things. And I started making fun of the guy because I felt bad for him. I said, look at Captain Hook going to work. Obviously, I would never make these jokes loudly enough for him to hear me. I would never hurt this guy's feelings. Or, you know, risk getting a hook in the side of the head. When you see a guy with a hook, you have to feel bad for him somehow. I see a guy and I go, who would put a hook at the end of their arm? How many times a day do you have an actual use for a big hook? If I lost my hand, I'd replace it with the key to my house before a big hook. I'd have a toothbrush sticking out of my sleeve. Make it detachable. Now it's a flashlight, a dustbuster, something. Hey, I'm 40 years old. I've never in my life said, honey, where's the big hook? You know, you need the hook, you can never find it. Today, big hook jokes epitomize my sense of humor. I know it's not for all taste. It's like Body of Christ with or without nuts, okay? It is potentially offensive to a lot of people. That's the secret of its charm. I read an article years ago in the Village Voice where a writer suggested that everybody in the world, without exception, was either a creep or an asshole. That is the truth. You are either a creep or an asshole. Do you know what you are? I am an asshole. I know that. My wife, Lisa, whom I love very much, is a creep. If you're not positive what you are, you're a creep, let me tell you. Assholes know they're assholes. They're actually proud of it. Let me tell you a joke. The way you naturally respond to this joke will tell you whether you're a creep or an asshole. This is guaranteed to work unless you've heard the joke before. Which you may have. It's the only thing in the show I didn't write. God, I love this joke. I first heard it when I was 10, and I still love it. There's a man pacing in the waiting room of a hospital, waiting for his wife to deliver their next child. They've had a number of children up to this point, but they've all been horribly deformed. Do you like it so far? It gets better, really. Eventually, the doctor walks in. Look up consternation on his face. Mr. Smith, would you love your baby? Oh, say, I don't know, say, if it had no arms or legs. Oh, my God. Yes, I would. Just take me to my wife and baby. Well, brace yourself and follow me. So he leads him down this corridor, through this long hallway, into the delivery room. There's his wife in bed, big bundle in her arms. He kind of tiptoes over, peels back the blanket. There's a giant 10-pound eyeball. The guy goes, oh my God, what could be worse? The doctor looks at him and says, he's blind. Okay? If you burst out laughing at that joke, you're an asshole. If you did what my wife would have done, kind of smiled, but inwardly went, you're a creep. There is is no value judgment here. It is not better to be a creep or an asshole. You were born one of these two things, you'll die the same thing. Look at your friends. Isn't it obvious who the creeps and assholes are? Some people are elusive. My brother, Mr. Religion, huge asshole. Mike laughs at the sickest things in life. The hardest I've ever seen my brother Mike laugh was at a newscaster in Portland, Oregon, who had a speech impediment. Why he became a newscaster, I don't know, really. What he used to do, though, is switch up his THs and his S's, had a sibilant problem, and the writers must have known that, because they gave him an awful lot of them in his story. One night, for the life of this guy, he could not get through this story, and we were dying. Mike was on his back, twitching as though electricity's going through. I'm down on one knee, about to pass out, and I glance at the screen, and this guy's going, "Diable Thitha," like that. God, it was funny. 5 minutes later, we're still laughing. Mike's on his feet trying to say something to me. "You know, Ricky..." And finally, he wiped his eyes, he looked right at me and said, "You know, Ricky, only the truth is funny." Whoa. I was 10 years old when Mike said that to me, and it seemed like pure genius.